So comprehensible input is one of the most important things you can do in order to learn a new language. And the main avenues of getting comprehensible input will usually be reading books and watching some kind of video, either on Netflix or YouTube. But the key factor here is that the input needs to be comprehensible. You have to be able to understand what's going on, otherwise you're really not getting a whole lot of benefit out of it. Some people will debate that, but by and large, most people agree that you have to be able to understand what you're seeing in order to learn some of the language through it. Now, you don't have to be able to understand everything. Okay, some of it can go right over your head, and you can still be getting some benefit out of watching or reading. But you have to be able to understand at least a little bit. Now, the key here is that you don't necessarily have to be able to understand all of the language going into your comprehensible input, right? You could go into watching a video not knowing all of the words, but being able to understand what's happening based off of context, right? So you see the video, you see that there is a sheep in the video, and then you hear them use the word for sheep. Okay, you didn't know that word going in. That word was not comprehensible going into the video. But during the video, you learn the word for sheep because they use it over and over, and you can see with your eyes that there's a sheep. Okay, that's one way to make comprehensible input more comprehensible. Okay, and there's a bunch of different ways that we can make input more comprehensible. Okay, I want you to imagine watching a movie in your target language. Okay, let's say you're watching an action movie. For me, I'll say Star Wars. Okay, going into watching Star Wars, there's lots of stuff that's going to go on that you're just not going to understand, right? You're not going to understand probably long drawn out explanations of the Force, but you might be able to understand when they pull out a lightsaber and say, this is a lightsaber, you know, and they swing it around. You'll be able to understand a lot of the action that's going on when they're running all around, yelling commands at each other. You'll be able to understand a lot of that, and you would be able to follow along with the story even if the video was on mute. Okay, not everything, but you'll be able to understand a lot of what's going on because you can see it visually and you have some context for how humans interact with each other. And I guess in the case of Star Wars, how aliens interact with each other too. Okay, now there's a very strong additional benefit that comes with watching Star Wars, at least for me. And that's the fact that I am already very familiar with the Star Wars universe. I've seen all the movies already. So when I went to go watch Star Wars in Spanish, I was not lost at all. I understood everything, even if I didn't understand every single word, just because I already know the story. Okay, that is one way to make your comprehensible input more comprehensible so that you're able to start with comprehensible earlier on in your language learning journey. All right, so just because you don't understand any words yet in your language does not mean that you can't use comprehensible input. It doesn't mean you're not ready for that. You actually are ready for that. You just need the right type of comprehensible input. Okay, I have a list of YouTube channels that are all dedicated to comprehensible input, and many of them are very, very easy that you can start watching from day one, from the very beginning, the first day you start learning your language. All right, and that's because they take great pains to make their input more comprehensible by showing you lots of visualizations. They sometimes use subtitles and things like that, and they do lots of repetitions. Okay, repetitions are key. And just as an example of making input as comprehensible as possible, if you will excuse a shameless advertisement of my own work, I've published a number of books. Let's see if you can see them in the glare here. And the entire key of these books, which I've published them in English, Spanish, Esperanto, Tokipona, German, and Thai. We just finally were able to release my newest version of the book in Thai. Okay, so if you're learning any of these language, I would recommend checking them out. I put a lot of work into making sure these books were as comprehensible as possible. Okay, in the early versions of the book, in the beginner section, I use lots of pictures so you can see what's going on. I tried to make them kind of funny and interesting. Okay, there's comprehension questions towards the end that use the same repetitive vocabulary words that are in the beginner sections of the book. In all of the versions other than the English version, obviously, I also include little dictionaries at the bottom of the page. That way, if you're reading through, you're a brand new beginner, you don't understand anything, the key words are there. So you don't need to waste time going and looking in a dictionary, right? Then after you get some repetitions, you go through the story, you read it a few times so you're familiar with it. Maybe you take the time to look up any words that you're still not familiar with, even after these keywords down here. You're familiar with the story. Then you go through and you get to level 2. Okay, it's the same story. All right, this is key. It's the same story that you're already familiar with because you just read the story in level 1, the beginner level. You saw pictures that were able to help you understand. Now you get to level 2 and you're reading the same thing. It's just more complex. There's more details added. Okay, and you have a little section down here for notes. If there's any other words that words that you look up that you didn't know, or any grammatical constructions that you run into along the way. Okay, so these books are available, on Amazon. I'll include a link down in the description below. And those are just examples, though, of content that I took great pains to make the stories more comprehensible than they would have been if I was just telling the story. But I am by no means alone in this area. Okay, like I said, I'm going to also include a link to YouTube channels where the creators, they go a long way trying to bend over backwards, making sure you understand what is being said. Because if you first understand the message, then you will then understand the language.